Marcus Everett, 42, sat in the cab of his battered Ford pickup, the engine ticking as it cooled in the late afternoon heat of a small-town Georgia gas station. His broad shoulders were relaxed, his dark eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of amber. The truck, rusted and worn, was more than a vehicle, it was a relic of his past, a reminder of the life he'd left behind after his wife, Aisha, was taken from him in a police raid gone wrong 7 years ago. Back then, Marcus was an FBI counter-corruption operative, dismantling rogue police units with surgical precision. Her death, under the guise of a mistake, shattered his faith in the system he'd served, leaving him retired, quiet, and carrying a grief that clung like dust to his bones. He'd moved to this sleepy town to escape the noise of his past, but the past had a way of finding him. As he leaned his elbow on the open window, the scent of diesel and pine thick in the air, a sheriff's county cruiser screeched into the lot, its tires kicking up gravel. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd seen this before, too many times. The deputy, Sean Carter, 35, stepped out, his boots crunching with purpose, his badge glinting like a challenge. Sean's face was sharp, all angles and anger, a man whose childhood of chaos, shuttled between foster homes after his parents' addiction tore them apart, had hardened into a need to dominate. His eyes locked onto Marcus's truck, parked half a foot over the line at pump 6, and something dark flickered across his face. "You think you can just park this piece of junk anywhere?" Sean spat, his voice laced with venom as he approached. The words weren't just about the truck, they carried the weight of something uglier, something Marcus had heard in countless variations over the years. "Get out. Now." Marcus turned his head slowly, his expression unreadable, his calm a wall that Sean couldn't breach. "Didn't see a sign," he said, voice low, steady, like the hum of a distant storm. "Thought it was public parking." Sean's laugh was sharp, theatrical. "Public? You don't belong here, trash." The slur landed like a slap, but Marcus's face didn't change. He stepped out of the truck, his movements deliberate, his tall frame unfolding with a quiet strength that made Sean take a half step back. The gas station grew still, a mother froze by the snack aisle, a cashier's hand hovered over the emergency button, and a young man, barely 20, pulled out his phone, sensing the air crackle with danger. "ID," Sean demanded, his hand on his holster, fingers twitching. Marcus's eyes, deep and unflinching, met his. "In the glove box," Marcus replied, still calm, his hands raised slowly, palms open. Sean didn't wait for him to move. He yanked the door open, the hinges groaning, and sneered at the truck's worn interior. "Too late," he muttered, then turned to the growing crowd. "Back off." Without warning, Sean stormed to his cruiser, grabbed a red canister from the trunk, and marched back. The crowd murmured, phones raised, as he doused the truck bed with gasoline, the acrid smell cutting through the humid air. Marcus stood motionless, his face half-shadowed, his eyes reflecting the glint of Sean's lighter. "You should have known your place," Sean growled, flicking the lighter. The flame caught the fumes, and the truck erupted in a roar of orange and red, the heat warping the air, cracking nearby windows, and sending sparks skyward. Screams broke out. A child pressed against the store's glass, eyes wide. The crowd shouted, he didn't resist. As phones captured every second. Sean's badge gleamed in the firelight, but his triumph faltered as Marcus stood, unmoved, the flames dancing in his pupils. His silence wasn't fear, it was judgment, heavy and unyielding. Marcus's heart, scarred by Aisha's loss, beat with a quiet resolve. He'd seen fires before, both literal and figurative, and he knew they burned out lies faster than metal. Sean, pacing now, his boots crunching glass, shouted, "He's resisting," but the crowd's mirrors, those phones, reflected only his guilt. Marcus's stillness wasn't just defiance, it was a choice, forged in the ashes of a life where speaking too loudly had cost him everything. As the sirens wailed in the distance, he stood, a man who'd learned that silence could scream louder than any flame, watching the truck that carried his memories burn, knowing the real fire was just beginning. The fire at Pump 6 hadn't died when the 16-second video hit the internet like a match to dry grass. Uploaded by a college kid named Tyler, who'd stepped out of the gas station for a soda, the clip was raw, no edits, no commentary, just the truth in high definition. It showed Deputy Sean Carter hurling gasoline onto Marcus Everett's truck, his voice cracking with slurs, his lighter flicking to life. In the center of the frame stood Marcus, 42, unmoving, his dark eyes steady as the flames roared, his silence louder than the crowd's screams. By nightfall, the video had leaped from a local subreddit to Twitter, TikTok, and every news outlet's breaking feed, racking up millions of views. Hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #BurnedByTheBadge trended, each retweet sharpening the public's rage. In the small Georgia town, the air buzzed with tension. At a diner on Main Street, locals hunched over phones, replaying the clip, their whispers growing into arguments. "He didn't even flinch," a waitress said, shaking her head, her hands trembling as she poured coffee. "That deputy's unhinged," a trucker muttered, his fork paused mid-bite. On social media, the video's power lay in its clarity. Sean's badge gleamed as he sneered, "You should have known your place," while Marcus's calm, a wall of quiet dignity, made the deputy's cruelty stark. Comment threads exploded, some called it staged, others tracked the gas station's logo to pinpoint the town. A few recognized Sean from prior complaints, his name already whispered in bars as a man who loved power too much. Marcus, meanwhile, sat in a beige holding room at the sheriff's station, 3 miles from the smoldering wreckage of his truck. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow on the steel table bolted to the floor. No cuffs bound his wrists, but the air was thick with presumption. 2 officers stood outside, their voices low. "Who just stands there like that?" one muttered. Marcus's silence wasn't defiance, it was a habit, carved deep by years in the FBI, where he'd learned that words could be twisted, but stillness spoke truth. His mind drifted to Aisha, her laugh, her warmth, and the night she died in a raid meant for someone else, her name buried under collateral damage. That loss taught him to endure, to wait, to let others' actions unravel themselves. Back online, the video's reach grew feral. TikTok creators froze Marcus's face, zooming in on his eyes, steady, unflinching, like a man who'd seen worse fires. YouTubers dissected Sean's slurs in split-screen reactions, their gasps fueling the outrage. A hashtag #WhoIsMarcus, surged as users speculated, was he an activist? A veteran? The mystery of his composure drove the story deeper. Ethan Cole, a 28-year-old journalist with a chipped front tooth and a grudge against corrupt cops, saw the video at 2 a.m. Ethan's brother had been wrongfully arrested years ago, beaten for resisting when he'd only asked why. That scar drove Ethan to dig. He scoured forums, DMV records, and old FOIA leaks, chasing the man who didn't blink. Sean Carter, holed up at home, paced his cluttered living room, the TV blaring news anchors reading his name like a death knell. His phone buzzed with texts from buddies, cops who'd shared beers and bragged about bending rules, but none offered help. Sean's past, a childhood of foster homes and fists, had taught him to fight for control, but now it slipped through his fingers. He'd expected the town to shrug, as it always had when he bent the law, but Marcus's silence, captured in that viral frame, had turned the crowd against him. His badge, still pinned to his uniform on the couch, felt like a lie he couldn't sell. At the sheriff's office, Sheriff Daniel Holt, 50, clicked his pen behind his mahogany desk, his face a mask of calm hiding panic. Holt had climbed the ranks by protecting his own, trading favors with local politicos to keep his department untouchable. He'd known Sean's temper but saw it as a tool, until now. "Delete the body cam footage," he told his deputy chief, his voice low, sharp. "Before the DA gets it." But the video, unstoppable, had already cracked the department's armor. A clerk, Sarah Monroe, 27, whose father died in a police shooting Sean had helped cover up, copied the footage to a flash drive, her hands shaking with the weight of her choice. Marcus, still in the holding room, sipped the water they gave him, his face unreadable. He didn't need to speak, the world was doing it for him. His silence, born of grief and tempered by purpose, had lit a spark that no badge could extinguish. As the crowd outside the station grew, holding signs that read, "He stood still, we won't," Marcus closed his eyes, feeling Aisha's memory steady him. The fire wasn't just in the truck, it was in the truth, spreading, unstoppable, and he knew it would burn until the lies were ash. Ethan Cole's apartment in Atlanta was a chaos of coffee mugs, legal pads, and glowing laptop screens, each tab a thread in his obsessive hunt for the man called Marcus Everett. At 28, Ethan's wiry frame and bloodshot eyes told of sleepless nights fueled by a need to expose the rot in systems that had chewed up his brother and spit him out broken. The 16-second video of Marcus standing unflinching as his truck burned had hooked him, not just the fire, but the man's silence, a stillness that seemed to know more than it said. Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing grainy gas station footage with archived FBI reports and leaked DOJ memos. By 4 a.m., he'd found a name buried in a redacted deposition from 2015, Marcus Everett, former counter-corruption operative, a ghost who'd toppled rogue sheriffs and precincts before vanishing in 2018. Marcus wasn't just a bystander, he was a man who'd spent a decade dismantling corruption from the inside, his operations so covert they left only whispers in federal files. Ethan pieced together fragments. Marcus had led stings that exposed white nationalist cops in Alabama, shut down a kickback scheme in Texas, and forced resignations in Chicago, all without a press conference or a medal. But in 2018, after a botched raid in Baltimore killed his wife, Aisha, Marcus retired, his silence not retreat but a shield for a grief too deep for words. Ethan stared at a blurry photo from a DOJ archive, Marcus's face half-shadowed, and felt a chill. This wasn't just a story, it was a reckoning. Online, the video's heat hadn't cooled. #WhoIsMarcus trended globally, with users digging into Marcus's stillness like archaeologists unearthing a relic. A TikTok stitched the clip with a voiceover, "This man's eyes saw the fire before it started." A Twitter thread with 200,000 likes speculated he was ex-military, a monk, or a vigilante. But Ethan's article, published at dawn on a news site with a cult following, dropped the truth like a stone into water. The man they burned, Marcus Everett, the FBI's silent hammer. It detailed his career, Aisha's death, and his retreat to Georgia, framing his silence as a deliberate act, a man who'd learned that systems collapse under their own weight if you let them swing. The article went viral, syndicated by noon, read by millions. In a D.C. bar, a retired FBI agent choked on his beer, recognizing Marcus's name. In a Chicago law firm, a civil rights lawyer forwarded the link with the subject, "He's back." The public's fascination shifted from outrage to awe, not just at Marcus's past, but at his restraint. Memes of Sean Carter's sneering face captioned "Badge of Shame" gave way to Marcus's silhouette, stenciled on protest signs, "Stillness afire." Ethan's inbox flooded with tips, some true, some wild, but one stood out, a grainy 1998 video from a rural Georgia fire, showing a younger Marcus carrying a child through smoke. At the sheriff's station, Marcus sat in the same holding room, the fluorescent buzz a dull ache in his temples. He'd heard the officers' whispers through the door, "They're saying he's some kind of fed." His silence wasn't a game, it was survival, a lesson from Aisha's death. Words could be twisted, but presence couldn't. He thought of her smile, her voice urging him to keep going, and steadied his breath. Outside, the crowd swelled, chanting his name, but Marcus didn't want their worship. He wanted their eyes open, seeing the system that let Sean Carter light a match. Sean, confined to his apartment, watched Ethan's article spread, his stomach twisting. His foster home scars, physical and not, had taught him to fight, to control, but Marcus's shadow loomed larger than any fist could touch. Sean's phone was silent, his buddies had ghosted him, and Sheriff Daniel Holt hadn't returned his texts. Holt, in his office, shredded memos that mentioned Sean's incidents, his jaw tight. He'd groomed Sean as a blunt tool, but now the tool was a liability. "We'll say he acted alone," Holt told his deputy chief, but Sarah Monroe, the clerk whose father's death Sean had buried, had already uploaded the body cam footage to a cloud drive, her heart pounding with defiance. The town felt the shift. At the gas station, now cordoned off, a makeshift memorial grew, flowers, candles, notes reading, "We saw you, Marcus." A teenager spray-painted, "Silence Speaks," on the curb. Marcus, still detained, felt the weight of their gaze but refused to bend. His silence wasn't just for him, it was for Aisha, for every name erased by a badge. As Ethan's article reached the governor's desk, Marcus's shadow stretched further, a quiet force that no fire could burn out, no lie could outrun. Sheriff Daniel Holt's office smelled of stale coffee and desperation, the blinds half-drawn against the noon sun slicing through the Georgia heat. At 50, Holt was a man of calculated compromises, his career built on shielding deputies like Sean Carter to keep his grip on the county's power. But the viral video of Marcus Everett's burning truck had cracked that grip. Holt's phone buzzed with demands from the mayor, the DA, and reporters sniffing for blood. He leaned back in his creaking chair, eyes on the monitor where a tech tried, and failed, to scrub body cam footage from the server. "It's already out," the tech whispered, sweat beading on his brow. Holt's jaw tightened. Someone had betrayed him. Sarah Monroe, 27, sat at her desk in the records room, her pulse hammering as she refreshed an anonymous X account she'd created hours ago. The body cam footage she'd leaked, a shaky 90 seconds showing Sean Carter's slurs and Marcus's unyielding calm, was spreading like wildfire, retweeted by thousands. Sarah's father, killed in a resisting arrest incident Sean had helped bury, had taught her to trust her gut. That gut told her Marcus's silence was a call to act. Her leak wasn't revenge, it was a debt to truth, paid in trembling fingers and a flash drive hidden in her purse. Outside, the town churned. The gas station, now a pilgrimage site, bore scorch marks and a growing pile of tributes, teddy bears, letters, a sign reading, "Marcus stood, we stand." Ethan Cole's article naming Marcus as an ex-FBI operative had turned the story into a national obsession. CNN ran loops of the fire, pundits debating Marcus's stillness as protest or surrender. On X, #FireTheSheriff gained traction, fueled by Sarah's leak. The footage showed not just Sean's rage but the department's complicity, officers watching, doing nothing. Holt's vague press release, "We're investigating," fooled no one. Marcus, released from holding but tailed by a deputy, sat on a park bench 2 miles away, his hands clasped, eyes on the horizon. The crowd chanting his name at the station felt distant, their noise a weight he didn't ask for. His silence wasn't for them, it was for Aisha, whose death in a raid had shown him how systems twist justice. He'd spent years exposing corrupt cops, but her loss taught him that real change came when people saw the rot themselves. The leaked footage, though he hadn't seen it, was proof, his stillness had forced others to move. Sean Carter, barricaded in his apartment, watched the leaked video on his phone, his face paling. The footage caught his slurs, his lighter's flick, and Marcus's eyes, those damn eyes, steady as stone. Sean's foster home past had taught him to swing first, but now every swing missed. His badge, tossed on the coffee table, mocked him. Texts from Sheriff Holt had stopped, and whispers of an IA probe reached him through a buddy. Sean's control, his only armor, was gone, stripped by a man who hadn't said a word. Lena Harper, 30, a civil rights lawyer with a razor-sharp mind, saw Sarah's leak on her phone in an Atlanta coffee shop. Lena had been Marcus's student a decade ago, his quiet lessons on strategic restraint shaping her courtroom fire. She'd faced racial profiling herself as a teen, her car searched for suspicious behavior. Now, she texted Marcus, "I'm in. We're filing." His reply was one word, "Good." Lena's hands shook, not from fear, but from knowing Marcus's silence was her megaphone. She drafted a report listing 7 past misconduct cases, including Aisha's raid, her fingers fueled by a vow to make the system bleed truth. Holt, cornered, called a press conference, his tie crooked, his voice rehearsed. Deputy Carter acted alone, he said, dodging questions about the leak. But the crowd outside, waving phones with Sarah's video, drowned him out. Sarah, back at her desk, exhaled, her secret safe for now. Marcus, on his bench, felt the town's pulse shift, not toward him, but toward something bigger. His silence, a spark in the dark, had lit a fuse no sheriff could snuff out. The 1998 video surfaced on a quiet Sunday morning, grainy but unmistakable, uploaded by an anonymous ex-user with the handle, TruthSeeker98. It showed a meth house fire in rural Georgia, flames licking the night sky, and a young Marcus Everett, barely 25, charging through smoke to carry a coughing child to safety. The boy, Thomas Keene, now 32 and a governor's chief of staff, froze when his aide showed him the clip. "That's him," Thomas whispered, his voice thick. The video, cross-posted to every platform, added a new layer to Marcus's myth, not just a stoic ex-Fed, but a lifelong hero who'd risked death for a stranger's child. The clip hit harder than Ethan Cole's article or Sarah Monroe's leak. Families shared it over breakfast, teachers played it in civics classes, and pastors wove it into sermons. On X, #MarcusSavedHim trended, with users stitching the 1998 rescue to the gas station fire, captioning it, "Same man, same strength." The public saw Marcus not as a symbol but as a man who'd carried their pain long before his truck burned. Ethan, hunched over his laptop, added the video to his next piece, "The Hero We Didn't Know," his fingers trembling with the weight of Marcus's past. The rescue wasn't just heroism, it was proof Marcus's silence was earned, forged in fire long ago. Marcus, staying at a friend's trailer to dodge reporters, saw the video on a muted TV. His jaw tightened, not at the praise, but at the child's cries echoing Aisha's last breath in his memory. He'd saved Thomas but couldn't save her, and the world's applause hollow. His FBI work had been about prevention, stopping corrupt cops before they hurt others, but Aisha's death showed him no badge could outrun fate. His silence now was his last tool, a way to make others act where he'd failed. He turned off the TV, his hands steady, his heart heavy. Sheriff Daniel Holt faced a mob of cameras outside his station, his lone actor lie crumbling as Sarah's leak tied him to Sean's past complaints. The 1998 video made it worse. Marcus wasn't just a victim, he was a savior, and Holt's department had burned his truck. Inside, he snapped at aides, "Find who's leaking," but Sarah, filing reports, stayed invisible, her resolve steel. Her father's death, covered up by Sean, had taught her silence could hide truth, now it could free it too. She slipped another file, Holt's email ordering a cleanup, to Ethan's encrypted Dropbox, her breath short. Sean Carter, now suspended, saw the 1998 video on his brother's phone, his gut churning. Marcus wasn't just a target, he was a ghost who'd outrun fire before. Sean's childhood had taught him to fight, but Marcus's silence was a mirror showing his weakness. He drank, alone, as neighbors shunned him, their whispers, "That's the cop," louder than any siren. His lawyer mentioned a plea, but Sean's pride, brittle as ash, held firm. Lena Harper, in her cramped Atlanta office, wove the 1998 video into her case file, linking Marcus's heroism to his restraint now. She met Marcus at a diner, her eyes fierce. "They're scared of you," she said, meaning Holt. Marcus sipped coffee, his silence a nod. Lena's report, now public, listed 7 crimes, Aisha's raid the heart of it, a mistake tied to Holt's allies. The town read it, and gasped. Protests swelled, signs reading, "Honor Marcus, End Corruption." Lena, shaped by Marcus's lessons, felt his shadow empower her voice. Marcus walked past the gas station at night, its ashes a reminder. The crowd signs, now hundreds, didn't name him, they named Aisha, Sarah's father, others. His silence wasn't for glory, it was for echoes, for the past to ripple into change. As the 1998 video played on a loop, Marcus felt Thomas Keene's weight in his arms again, and Aisha's voice, "Keep going." He did, the town's awakening an echo of his quiet call. The Bibb County Courthouse, a squat brick building with peeling paint, became a crucible on a crisp October morning. Lena Harper, 30, stood at the plaintiff's table, her suit sharp, her voice sharper, as she filed a federal lawsuit against Sheriff Daniel Holt's department. The courtroom buzzed with reporters, their pens scratching as Lena presented Marcus Everett's case, not just the truck fire, but a pattern of 7 misconduct incidents, each a wound on the town's conscience. Aisha's 1997 raid, detailed in declassified FBI notes, was the charge's heart. Mistake raid that killed an innocent woman, approved by Holt's predecessor, with a Holt as deputy. Lena's voice, trained by Marcus's quiet mentorship, cut through the room. This isn't one fire. It's a system that burns. Marcus sat in the back, his hands folded, his silence a presence heavier than any testimony. He'd refused to take the stand, knowing his stillness spoke louder. His eyes, steady, watched Lena weave Aisha's memory into law, her death no longer a footnote but a call to justice. Spectators whispered about his 1998 video, his FBI past, but Marcus felt only the weight of eyes, public, not on him, but on the truth he'd forced them to see. Aisha's smile, her laugh, flickered in his mind, grounding him as Lena listed Sean Carter's slurs, Holt's cover-ups, and a department's complicity. Outside, the crowd swelled. Ethan Cole, fueled by Ethan's latest piece and Sarah Monroe's leaks, held signs, "Aisha matters, fire Holt." Ethan, scribbling notes in a notebook, felt his brother's wrongful arrest echo in every charge. His articles had turned Marcus into a reluctant prophet, but now, in court, he saw the man's plan, silence as a mirror, showing a town its scars. Ethan's latest leak, a Holt email ordering, "clean up Sean's mess," had forced the DA to widen the probe, and 17 old cases, including Sarah's father's, were reopened, their files dusted off like graves. Sheriff Holt, under subpoena, took the stand, his face gray, his voice rehearsed. "I acted in good faith," he claimed, but Lena's cross-examination, a blade honed by Marcus's lessons, sliced through. "You deleted evidence." "Why?" Holt's stammers drowned in gasps from the gallery. Sarah, in the crowd outside, watched on her phone, her leak a crack in Holt's armor. Her father's death had been her silence, now it was her power, a power Marcus's stillness had unlocked. She sent Ethan one last tip, a photo of Holt at a fundraiser with Sean's old high school friend, a known supremacist. Sean Carter, in a holding cell awaiting his own hearing, watched the trial stream on a guard's tablet, his hands cuffed. Lena's words, "Carter's hate wasn't alone, it was enabled, burned worse than the fire he'd set." His foster home rage, once his fuel, was ash now, exposed by Marcus's unblinking eyes. Sean's lawyer pushed a plea, but his pride, cracked but stubborn, held him silent, a bitter echo of Marcus's strength. The town felt the trial's pulse. At the gas station, a new sign read, "We burned, we learned," nailed by a teenager whose cousin was beaten by Sean years ago. Lena's closing, "Marcus Everett stood still so we could move," went viral, clipped on TikTok with piano chords. Marcus, leaving the courthouse, ignored cameras, his silence a shield. He'd given Lena Aisha's old bracelet that morning, a quiet thanks. His grief, once a chain, felt lighter, not gone, but shared, carried by a town waking up. Sean Carter's world collapsed in fragments, each sharper than the last. At 35, he'd built his life on control, fists in foster homes, badges in precincts, fear in the eyes of those he stopped. But Marcus Everett's silence had stripped him bare. In a Bibb County courtroom, Sean's hearing drew a packed gallery, their phones banned but their glares loud. The charges, arson, hate crimes, civil rights violations, piled like bricks, each tied to the viral video, Sarah Monroe's leaks, and Lena Harper's relentless filings. The DA, spurred by Ethan Cole's exposé on Sean's ties to a local hate group, dug into his finances, uncovering cash deposits from dubious security gigs. Sean's badge, once his armor, was now evidence. Sean took the stand, his jaw tight, his eyes avoiding the crowd. His lawyer spun a tale of stress and split-second choices, but the gallery scoffed. Lena, cross-examining, held up a still from the body cam, Sean's sneer, Marcus's calm. "You called him trash." "Why?" she asked, her voice ice. Sean muttered, "He disrespected me," but the lie crumbled under Marcus's shadow, those unblinking eyes, replayed on every screen in America. The judge's gavel fell, Sean was remanded, bail denied, his foster home defiance useless against a truth he'd ignited. Outside, the town turned on him. Neighbors who'd shared beers now crossed the street. His landlord left an eviction notice, citing community complaints. Sean's apartment, once a fortress, felt like a cage, the TV looping Ethan's latest, Carter's Hate, enabled by silence. Sean's childhood, a blur of fists and hunger, had taught him to fight back, but Marcus's stillness was a foe he couldn't touch. Alone, he stared at his badge, its gleam gone, and felt a flicker of something new, not regret, but fear of a world that saw him clearly. Sheriff Daniel Holt's fall was quieter but no less brutal. Ethan's leaked email, clean up Sean's mess, and Sarah's photos tied Holt to a network of enablers, from donors to deputies with their own dirty files. The governor's probe, spurred by Lena's 17 reopened cases, forced Holt's suspension, his office raided by state police. Holt, holed up at home, watched his career dissolve on CNN, his wife packing bags in silence. He'd shaped Sean as a weapon, but Marcus's silence had turned that weapon against him. Holt's power, built on favors and lies, was ash now, burned by a man who'd said nothing. Marcus, staying at a friend's trailer, read Ethan's reports but skipped the TV. The crowd signs, Sean falls, Marcus stands, felt heavy, not heroic. His silence wasn't for Sean's ruin but for Aisha's memory, for a system to see its cracks. He visited the gas station at dawn, its memorial grown, candles, notes, a child's drawing of a man in flames, unharmed. A woman, whose son was harassed by Sean, touched Marcus's arm. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus nodded, his silence a bridge to her pain. Lena, in her Atlanta office, pinned Aisha's bracelet to her board, a reminder of Marcus's trust. Her filings had sparked resignations, 3 deputies, 2 clerks, all tied to Holt's cover-ups. Ethan, chasing a Pulitzer, sent Marcus a draft of his book outline, "You're the core," he wrote. Marcus didn't reply, but kept it, his silence a nod. Sarah, promoted to record supervisor, archived her leaks, her father's case now reopened. The town, moved by Marcus's stillness, felt lighter, its eyes open. Sean's fall was his own, but Marcus's rise was theirs, a quiet fire that burned on. Marcus Everett's silence wasn't just break Sean Carter or topple Daniel Holt, it woke a town from a long slumber of complacency. By November's end, the gas station in Georgia was no longer just a crime scene, it was a shrine. A cedar plank, carved with "We burned, we learned," stood firm, hammered into the earth by a group of locals who'd never protested before. A single mother left a candle for Aisha, a veteran taped a note, "Your silence saved my faith." Teenagers, whose TikToks had spread the fire's video, now painted murals, Marcus's silhouette, not in flames, but in light, his eyes steady, unyielding as truth. The town, once quiet about its scars, began to heal through small acts. The change was in the details. At a town hall, a baker named Jamal, 38, whose shop was trashed by Sean's buddies years ago, hosted a meeting for neighbors, his voice shaky but sure. "If Marcus can stand still, we can stand up," he said. They formed a civilian review board, its first act, demanding body cam audits. A high school teacher, inspired by Lena Harper's filings, taught her kids about Aisha's raid, their essays shared on X, reaching thousands. A diner owner, whose diner once ignored Sean's slurs, now had a sign, "No hate served here." These weren't loud, but they were real, threads of a new fabric, woven from Marcus's quiet call. Marcus, back in his friend's trailer, felt the world shift but stayed apart. The murals, the signs, the hashtags, they weren't his to claim. His silence, born of Aisha's loss, was for prevention, not praise. One night, a reporter ambushed him at a grocery store. Mike thrust forward, "What do you want from this?" Marcus paused, his voice low, deliberate, "I want no revenge, only prevention." The sentence, caught on camera, went viral, clipped on TikTok with gospel chords, tweeted with hashtag Marcus Speaks. It wasn't a speech but a seed, sprouting in small ways. A cop resigned, a kid helped a neighbor, a town looked at itself. Lena Harper's Atlanta office buzzed with new clients, families whose stories echoed Aisha's, Sarah's fathers, others buried by Holt's men. Lena, wearing Aisha's bracelet, filed 3 more suits, each citing Marcus's case as precedent. Her voice, once a student spark under Marcus's guidance, was now a megaphone for the silenced. She met Marcus at a park, her eyes bright. "You planned this," she said, half laughing. He shook his head, but his silence said yes, a strategy of stillness, letting truth unfold. Lena's filings, now studied in law schools, sparked DOJ interest, with a probe into Georgia sheriff statewide. Ethan Cole, chasing leads in Macon, published The Fire That Changed Us, a long read tying Marcus to a national movement. His brother's arrest, once his shame, was now his lens, and Marcus was its focus. He sent Marcus a note, "You're why I keep digging." Marcus kept it, his silence a thanks. Sarah Monroe, now training clerks, saw her father's case move to trial, her leaks a bridge to closure. She visited the gas station shrine, her note simple, "For Dad." Her courage, like Marcus's, was quiet but fierce. Sheriff Holt's old allies scattered, donors distanced, deputies quit. The 17 reopened cases, fueled by Lena's work, exposed a pattern, from beatings to planted drugs, all linked to Holt's reign. The town's mayor, once Holt's backer, faced recall, a campaign led by Jamal's neighbors. Sean Carter, in jail, saw his hearing delayed, his plea deal crumbling as new charges piled up. His rage, once power, was noise now, drowned by Marcus's calm. Marcus walked the town at dawn, his boots soft on asphalt. The gas station's shrine glowed, its candles a constellation of small acts, Jamal's board, Lena's suits, Sarah's leaks, its stars. His sentence, "I want no revenge," was chalked on sidewalks, a mantra for a town learning to mend. His silence, Aisha's echo, had stirred something deeper, not just justice, but awakening, a vow to keep the fire burning clean. Sheriff Daniel Holt's empire didn't just crack, it shattered, under the weight of truth Marcus Everett's silence had forced to light. A leaked recording, slipped to Ethan Cole by Sarah Monroe's steady hand, was the final blow, a 3-minute audio of Holt, voice low and urgent, telling a deputy to bury a 2016 case where Sean Carter beat a black teen for loitering. The audio, uploaded to X at midnight, was raw, Holt's voice clear, his panic sharper as he named other deputies, other cover-ups, other lies. By morning, it was everywhere, CNN, MSNBC, even Fox, with anchors reading transcripts like obituaries. Hashtag Holt Exposed trended, with users stitching it to Marcus's burning truck, Lena's Harper's filings, Ethan's Cole's exposés. The state moved fast. Governor's investigators raided Holt's home at dawn, boxing up laptops, files, and a burner phone tied to Sean's donors. Holt, 27, suspended and facing charges, obstruction, conspiracy, perjury, stood in his driveway, his neighbors watching, their phones up, his power a memory. His career, built on trading loyalty for silence, had been untouchable, now it was ash, burned by Marcus's fire he'd tried to douse. The 17 reopened cases, fueled by Lena's report, bloomed into a DOJ probe, with 22 more added, each a family with a name: Aisha, Sarah's dad, a teen beaten, a vendor framed, demanding justice. Ethan Cole's scoop, the sheriff's secrets, hit newsstands, his byline a badge of vengeance for his sister's arrest. He tied Holt's audio to Marcus's silence, writing, "Everett didn't speak, he made us hear." The piece won awards, but Ethan cared more for the DMUs, families thanking him, a cop confessing to crimes. He met Sarah at a bar, their toast to Marcus wordless, their eyes heavy with shared scars. Sarah's leaks, once her fear, were her legacy now, her father's case set for trial, her courage a spark Marcus had lit. Lena Harper, in court, used Holt's audio to widen her case, linking Aisha's raid to a pattern Holt enabled. Her filings, now a federal case, forced 3 sheriffs to retire, their counties probed. She wore Aisha's bracelet, a talisman, and called Marcus, "Holt's done." He grunted, his silence a smile, his trust in her fuel. Lena's voice, sharpened by Marcus's lessons, was a beacon, with law students citing her in papers, her, a new generation's guide. Marcus stayed in the shadows, his trailer a refuge from cameras. He read Ethan's piece, heard Sarah's voicemails, saw Lena's filings, but skipped TV. His silence wasn't for Holt's fall, it was for Aisha, for prevention, for the 22 names now free to speak. He visited the gas station at night, its shrine now a garden, roses, marigolds, a kid's note, "You saw us." A woman, whose son was freed from a false charge, hugged him, sobbing. Marcus nodded, his silence her strength. Sean Carter, in jail, saw Holt's arrest on a cell's TV, his cellmates jeer, "Your boss fell too, a blade sharper." His plea deal, once a hope, was gone, new charges piling up, hate, conspiracy, fraud. His foster home rage was noise now, drowned by Marcus's calm, a calm he envied but couldn't touch. Sean's silence in court was a defeat, not a choice, a bitter mirror. The town streets glowed with new signs, sidewalks chalked with, "No revenge, only prevention," a diner's wall painted, "We see now." The DOJ probe, sparked by Lena, was slow, but real, with 10 officers indicted, resignations rolling in. Marcus's silence, Aisha's fire, had exposed a system's rot, each truth a spark that burned clean, a system bare. Marcus Everett didn't attend Sean Carter's sentencing or Sheriff Holt's hearing. The Bibb County Courthouse, once a stage for their lies, now felt like a monument to their fall, and Marcus had no need for its spotlight. On a cool March morning in 2026, he sat at a friend's kitchen table, a pen in hand, drafting a letter to the county clerk's office. "I'm not here for vengeance," he wrote, his words sparse, deliberate. "I ask only that you remember why this happened, and ensure it doesn't again." The letter, leaked by a clerk who'd read it, went viral, its lines quoted on X, preached in churches, scrawled on banners, "Silence isn't weak, it's a call to act." Marcus's voice, rare as it was reshaped a town's moral spine. Sean was sentenced to 12 years, arson, hate crimes, civil rights violations, conspiracy. The judge's words, live-streamed, echoed Lena Harper's filings, "Your fire burned a man's past, his silence burned your future." Sean, cuffed, stared at the floor, his foster home defiance ash now, his name a synonym for shame. Holt got 7 years for obstruction, perjury, and enabling fraud, his plea deal undone by Sarah Monroe's final leak, a ledger of favors tying him to hate groups. Their falls, once unthinkable, were now lessons, their badges relics in a DOJ exhibit on corruption's cost. The gas station, now a community garden, bore a bronze plaque, "This place burned, now it remembers." It was funded by Lena, etched with Aisha's name, Sarah's father's, and 25 others from the 47 reopened cases, 18 now won. The garden bloomed, sunflowers, roses, a child's marigold spelling, "Hope," for Marcus. Locals tended it, their acts a vow, no more silence, no more. Jamal's review board audited cops, the teacher's essays sparked a state curriculum, the law, Lena's suits forced DOJ reforms, Sarah's leaks cleared 3 more names. Ethan Cole's book, The Fire of Silence, hit bestseller lists, his dedication to Marcus, you didn't speak, you showed. They'd shown, and the town changed, it scars a map to better. Lena, in Atlanta's Atlanta, wore Aisha's bracelet as she argued a new case, her office a hub for families fighting badges. She framed Marcus's letter, her voice now a national force, his lessons her core. She visited Marcus at the garden, their hug wordless, his silence her thanks. Sarah, now a DA's investigators, closed her father's case, a conviction overturned. She left roses at the plaque, her courage Marcus's echo, a echo. Ethan, teaching journalism, told students Marcus's story, his brother's scar a lens, his Pulitzer a light. Marcus walked the garden at dawn, Marcus's boots soft on gravel paths. The murals had faded, but the plaque shone, its words a touchstone. A kid, whose dad was saved by Lena's case a suit, ran up, grinning, you're him. Marcus smiled, his silence no longer heavy but light, a gift to a world waking up. He'd lost Aisha's Aisha, but her fire lived, in Lena, Sarah, Ethan, in the garden, in a town that remembered. His letter's last line, keep looking, was carved into a bench, a promise kept. Marcus skipped the ceremonies, the governor's praise, the cameras. He drove north, his friend's truck a loner, the horizon open. The town signs, we learned, remembers, followed, we remembers, followed him, not as chains but as wings, a legacy. His silence, Aisha's call, had burned clean a system's rot, leaving room to build. Thank you, he thought to her, to them, to this audience, this story, a story for all who'd seen fire and chose to stand, to speak, to mend.